Recording in progress.
Okay. So here we go. So, welcome to the Red Belt Podcast. I'm here with Gary. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. It's good to see you, Brian.
All right, it's great to have you on. So, Gary has been doing after school and summer camp programs for a long time, like almost as long as I've been alive, maybe. How long you been doing this?
We started back in 1989. I've been doing martial arts a little over 50 years, but I remember the day my instructor came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to do an after-school program with a martial arts school." And I said, "You mean we're going to be a daycare center?" And he said, "No, it's a different concept." And so we literally started the first one in 1989 in Texas, and that's where it all began.
Where in Texas?
San Antonio.
San
So I live
Antonio.
north of Austin now. Yeah. So we did that for a few years, and then I got a job offer in Austin I just couldn't refuse, and so I moved up here and started my school part time, and then within a couple of years of that, I opened up full time, and we started the after school program here that I'm currently running now. We have our martial arts program, which is our core, but after school and summer camp programs are just additional revenue models. But we've really honed the process over the last 35 years to get it down to where it really, I mean, it hums. It's really, really good.
So that job offer you couldn't refuse. You refused it in 2 years. So in 2 years, your program was successful enough that you quit
Well,
that.
no, it was kind of, yeah, it was kind of funny though. It literally took me 4 years after the job offer came in, and I took a trip to Korea and China to train for 3 weeks during the summer of 2001. And while I was over there, I realized that I loved doing this a whole lot more than I loved the money I was making, because there was no happiness in it. There was the corporate, nonsense. There was always the red tape to get anything done. It was constantly something, and it just wasn't happy. So I went over to Korea and China to train for 3 weeks. And while I was over there, I realized that. So literally on the plane ride home, I wrote my resignation letter on the plane ride home, gave it to my boss that next Monday morning. And 3 weeks later, we opened up the academy full time. And as they say, the rest is history. The academy's been open in its full time existence for 23 years. I was part time from '97 before that, and so it's been a hell of a ride. I mean, we're blessed beyond belief, and we have a really great group of instructors and staff members that give me the ability to travel quite a bit. Like I'm getting ready. In fact, as soon as the podcast is over, I'm literally getting with my family to jump on a plane to cold Chicago, and for my son, he does club volleyball, so I'm going to do that. And then we literally in April, my wife and I go to Cabo, and then we'll go to Mexico again in the summertime. So we get to travel quite a bit, and it creates a lot of freedom in our lifestyle based upon where we're at. We're in the process of buying 4 acres of land and a new building that'll be done sometime early part of next year, 24,000 square feet. So it'll take us from our existing 9,000 square foot location to 24,000 square feet. So there's a lot of things that it has really opened up for us to be able to do and prosper and just live a very happy life, being able to impact people's lives with the martial arts.
That's on that. So you said a second ago that the it's pretty much supplemental program. So your after school and summer camp are supplemental. That's impressive to me considering you gave me your numbers of from the program. So if you don't mind maybe sharing some of those numbers from the viewers, you're doing more than most people are doing with their entire school with just after school and summer camp. And those are your supplemental numbers.
Right. So our summer camp program literally generates more revenue than most academies generate all year. And we do that in about 10 to 11 weeks. So we generate about $550,000 during the summertime just with summer camp. And after school brings in, there's 41 weeks of school in most school districts throughout the United States. And in that 7 weeks, we'll generate a little over 700,000 just in those two programs. Now, understand that those students that come into our academy, whether they're coming in through after school, they're coming in through summer camp, martial arts is our core. And for a lot of those students, we use summer camp as a lead generation tool. I don't use it as just a revenue tool, because sometimes people look at, oh, it's martial arts. They're teaching Eastern religion. They're doing these things. And they don't understand that the basic core tenets of the martial arts are massively important to these children. And so when the kids will come to camp for a week or two, and then once they're there, they realize, man, my kid's having a great time. They're standing a little taller. They're a little bit more confident. They're more respectful. How do I get into the program with, with after school or just doing martial arts lessons? Because not everybody needs after school. They may just need martial arts lessons. So we use that as a funnel to get them into the program, and then I convert them either into after school, which has martial arts built into it, or we have just martial arts programs so they can come and do without having to do after school or summer camp.
So it's basically the top of the funnel, right? So it's for you. Is that correct? So your summer camp is like the top of the funnel. That's where you're trying to acquire the leads. That's the first place you're putting the people, or no?
It's one, yeah, it's one of many, Brian. I would say that I look at marketing a little different than most people. So the way I tell my coaching clients is that you have to be like the donkey on Shrek. You remember the movie Shrek?
Yeah.
The very first one, and Donkey's like, pick me, pick me. We have to be in front of them all the time with some kind of form of way to get them into the academy. So whether we're doing it through martial arts marketing, we're doing it through summer camp, we're doing it through after school, we're doing it through birthday parties, we're doing it through community events like our Coaches Today program. We actually go out to the elementary schools and we teach the gym class for the day. In Texas, we have what's called TEKS. It's called the Texas Education Knowledge System. And the teachers are bound to have to teach so many TEKS in a year. Well, we've designed this program to actually teach 56 of the TEKS in a 50-minute period, which takes a load off of the coach in the gym class. And so we use every program to find a way to get somebody in the building. Summer camp is a great way. We'll probably bring in 150, 160 kids that have never been in our program before as a way to get them into the system. Now, the great thing about it is that if I've got one child that stays 10 weeks of camp, that generates $3,050 in revenue in that 10 weeks. But if I can get them now to convert over to martial arts, well, our martial arts program, our basic martial arts program, is over $3,000 a year for just to start off with. And then we'll move them into our peak performers program, and that's a little over $5,000 a year. So for my academy, I'm not looking at having massive numbers in the door. I'm looking at having the right students with the right tuition and the right environment, the right culture, so we can generate the revenue that we do, but also be able to spend a lot of time with these academies. I think one of the biggest mistakes the academy owners make is they think they need to be the cheapest in the area. That's how I'm going to get the most students. I'm going to be the least expensive in the area. And unfortunately, what happens is that you bring, $79 or $99 or $129 or $159 a month problems with that. People that are not committed to getting their kids where they need to be at. They sit in the stands and they were on their phones. And that's something I don't allow in my academy. I'll go to the parents and be like, you got to put your phone down and pay attention to your child. So we use the after school and summer camp programs to generate great revenue, but also to use them as lead funnels. Not to mention the fact that I get the kids with my staff, and I do extensive training with my staff. We spend about 5 hours a week with continuing ed with the staff. And so we're working on constant issues, and especially post-COVID, a lot of these children are not in a great place. I have a phrase that I coined called CDD, child development delayed. Where a child was at 5 or 6 years of age pre-COVID, children at the same age now are not at the same development level. They're about 18 months behind. And so a lot of these kids are focused, their concentration, is even more, it's more, what's the word I want to use? It's slowed down. It's not at the same level it was at pre-COVID. And for a lot of these children, the basic things that you and I did at 5 or 6 years of age, it freaks them out. Having to tie a shoe, having to pick up their own stuff and carry it. It's just a lot of these children are not. But if I have them all day with my staff, we really develop these skill sets a lot faster than if they were just with me for a 45-minute class. And so we have a lot of impact in their lives. They're standing a lot taller, or yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, please, thank you, you're welcome, good common courtesy. They're carrying their own stuff, because in summer camp, we don't carry the kids' stuff. It's like, dude, you got to carry it yourself. Here we go. We're out the door. We're moving. And so they have to learn how to, be organized. They have to learn how to do these things. So they're building a lot of skill sets while they're with us, and they're getting their martial arts training on top of the life skills development that we're doing with them in the program.
So I wanted to touch back on what you were talking about. You basically go in and you offer to teach these kind of PE courses and stuff for schools. So
Right.
obviously once you have that tie, it's going to be easier. So when you first pitch the school, though, if somebody listening is wanting to, like, hey, I think I want to pitch my school on that, what is that pitch? What is that whole process of reaching out to the school? How you reach out, contacts, email, whatever. What are you going to say? And what is that pitch going to look like? What's that process going to look like?
Yeah, great question. So for us, we're trying to, remove some pain point for the gym coaches. Because you think about it, gym coaches, unlike school teachers don't have 20, 25 kids in their class, maybe, right? The gym classes, they have 4 to 5 classes at one time that they have to organize games for every day of the school year. So you figure that if they can find any ways to bring somebody else in that's going to give them a way they don't have to organize that day, it really does release some load off of them. And I discovered years ago in Texas, because of the TEKS, and I would imagine those states have the same requirements. And if you can find a way how the martial arts utilizes and incorporates those, in Texas, they're called TEKS. So how do we utilize those TEKS? And we're teaching them for you, and you get to check off the boxes while you're sitting on the sideline watching a martial arts instructor be able to engage the students, and they're physically active, they're moving, and we're working on all these TEKS. And so for us, it was very, very easy that we put together, like, how would you like to have 56 TEKS taught in 50 minutes? How would you like to have, be able to sit on the sidelines one day and have all the activities planned for you? And for a gym coach, that's massive, because they have to plan every day for 100+ kids. And a lot of times it may be one gym coach and one assistant. They're not underneath the same teaching to student to teacher ratio that the teachers are in the classroom. So they have a lot more kids. They have a lot more responsibility. I also like using elementary school gym coaches for our summer camps, because they're used to dealing with a lot of kids. Like, we run about 160 kids every week in our camp. So if I've got a couple of gym coaches who are already used to using that, they're used to those numbers, it doesn't scare them when we're sitting on, on the mat and we've got 160 kids and we're moving and grooving and doing all those things. They're used to that. And we've designed games and stuff through our summer camp program. So they come in, they look at the game chart. Oh, I've done that game before. Yeah, here you go. Right. So it really kind of ties in, and we're building goodwill inside of the community and inside of the education system, because we're getting a lot of the kids are coming out, they're being more respectful to their teachers. They're, they're engaged, they're excited, they're happy. They're going back to class with a different attitude. They're saying, yes, sir, and no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, to the teachers. So it really builds a lot of good. And I mean, I literally have principals that'll call me up and say, hey, I've got a student that I've just referred to you. He's having a lot of problems. The parents are at their wits' end. What can we do? And I'm like, just send them to me. And a lot of times what happens, because the principals know how we run our academy, it fosters a great relationship between the education system and us, and they know we're a great resource for children that are in trouble.
Yeah, that's outstanding. So if you're able to build that relationship is that's one of the most effective, I think, old school marketing methods is like relationships are always going to still work, right? So if you
Right.
the business with the relationship with every other business and resource in town, that one's not dying. Like that one's going to be okay.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And this, even when marketing goes to crap, right? You have those times when, you have the ebbs and flows in the marketing cycles, and it happens, right? But, and because there's so much noise now. I remember when COVID was going on, and when COVID first started, I told my wife, hey, we're going to do different than everybody else. We're going to flood the market with marketing. We're going to flood the market with social media posts. We're going to do all of these things. And I remember how we're looking at the numbers and how social media engagements and social media posts actually increased with some of the companies. A lot of companies backed off because they're like, yeah, I can't spend money right now. I'm a little concerned about what's going to happen. Are we going to be open? We're not going to be open. And we actually grew a lot during COVID because everybody else shut down. I recognized what was happening, and I went to our county attorney and said, our county judge, and said, hey, I've got police officers and firefighters and EMS and essential workers who have kids in my program, and I can't shut down. So I need a variance. I need a letter saying that we're allowed to be open. So we never closed, and it was one of the best moves we had. I mean, we literally had the police called on us by our competitors. Why are they open? And it's like, because we did what we're supposed to do. So the police would show up and they're like, no, they have their variance. That's all written out by the county judge. So it was a great thing that we did, but we also saw a lot of what happened because of that. So we still ran summer camps. We still did after school. We did all that. We did academic day camps for kids that couldn't be in school. They would literally come in. We had 50, 60 kids that were in a classroom on Zoom with their teachers and their class because there was nobody going to school. And so it was one of those things. And those people that had to work, we picked up several clients that had never even think about coming to a martial arts academy, came to our academy, and then they converted over. They converted to summer camp, and they converted to after school and martial arts. Then they converted to our peak performers program. And so somebody who's in our peak performers program and also is in our after school program and summer camp program, you're talking about an annual value to us that is close to $12,000 a year that a parent will pay from them being in our program. And that's huge when you can get them to come back year after year after year. And so and stay in the program year after year after year. So most business owners are unaware of that. We don't look at, I didn't either when I first started my academy out. I didn't look at, when I'm building my academy, what is my exit strategy? And how am I building my revenue models and my profit models based upon my exit strategy? And I didn't understand it. I just went in, I'm doing my business, I'm doing martial arts. This is what I love to do. But this is one of the biggest things that I think academy owners need to understand. Whether your exit strategy is 2 years down the road or 50 years down the road, you need to have an exit strategy. It needs to be built on a formula. There's a formula called an EBITDA formula. And that EBITDA formula stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's literally the formula that's used by bankers, by people that are selling your business, that gives you the true value of your business. Now, most brick and mortar businesses have a 2.5, maybe 3x EBITDA formula that's set, right? The great thing about recurring revenue model businesses like the martial arts academies or after school or summer camp is that if you have a recurring revenue model where they're staying year after year after year after year, that EBITDA formula goes to a 7x. So you're literally getting 2.5 times more the value of your academy than if you were just a brick and mortar business. So when people are saying, I don't want to do contracts and I don't want to do this, well, what you're really doing is you're being short-sighted about the longevity of your academy and your exit strategy. I mean, that's a big thing on, and because we're not taught that at a young age. We're taught how to grapple, we're taught how to kick and block and punch, we're taught how to submit people. But as an academy owner, we need to be a black belt in business as well as a black belt in our form of art that we're teaching.
Yeah, so that's a good point. It's one reason I'm doing this podcast and doing a number of things is like, yes, you need to be like a black belt or a high level in business, but most people are not even blue belts or whatever your first belt is in your art. Most of these guys running
Right.
running these academies, they know next to nothing, and I knew next to nothing when I started my school too. So like it's normal, but it's a matter of like starting to get to go down that journey and figure it out.
Sure.
I also wanted to circle back to one thing that he said, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to have like somebody that does these after school camps and after school on, even though I don't do it, and a lot of people I know don't. But when he talks about
Right.
he got that permit that very few of us with martial arts schools got, right? During COVID, he was able to get that because all of a sudden he's essential, right? Because now he's providing not a luxury. And so a lot of us in martial arts have different opinions on like, okay, it is essential. It's building life skills. It's essential, but to the greater public, it's not immediately essential, right? Just like the greater public, like, hey, getting in shape. I mean, it could keep you from dying, but they're like, oh, that's not essential. What's essential is if there's nowhere to put your kids that are not old enough to take care of yourselves, then you can't work. You can't be a police officer, a firefighter, and infrastructure shuts down. So those
Right.
people,
Absolutely.
like, you can have the opinion that it's essential that your kids are physically active, but look around at kids. Obviously, that's not considered essential by everybody because they're not. I mean, they should be, but they're not. But so yeah, the positioning is very strong because now these parents must put their kids somewhere, right? And now you have these
Right.
other things to uh, to separate you from the competitors. But with other athletic activities, a valid answer for the parents is like none of the above. They could do martial arts with you or your martial arts competitors, or they could do gymnastics or dance or baseball or nothing. They could do nothing. But with after school, they can't do nothing. So now that's not an option, and just about everybody in the space is expensive, right? So after school is always expensive. So the cheap after school is expensive, and so now you put yourself at the top of that, and yeah. So
Yeah, so Brian, the best way to look at it is this way. So, and this is what I tell my parents all the time. And there's different factors inside of the after school program, right? So you have the after school pickup where you're picking the children up from school. You have whatever professional skills program, whether they have one or they don't. Then you have day camp days. What are day camp days is when they take a school holiday, but it's not a federal holiday, so the parent still has to work, right? And then what are they doing during their non-physical development time? Because for most kids coming to after school, they're going to be with you a minimum of an hour and a half to 3 hours on after school, right? And that doesn't include the day camp days, which are typically mostly all day. So what are you doing? And they can't train 3 hours a day. They'll get burned up. There's just no way to do that, right? So how are you structuring the program to make sure that they're getting the physical, emotional, mental, and social intelligence element all put into one, but it's disguised as fun and and happy activities, right? So you have to keep them engaged in that entire time. So to kind of back up just a little bit when you're talking about necessity, about essential. So I tell my coaching clients all the time that you can either be a necessity driven business model or you can be a luxury driven business model. And it was kind of funny you use that word, but we didn't plan that, but it's just a great way it is. So the way that looks at is that when you're a necessity driven business model, when parents are looking at their budget every month, right? And we're getting ready to come up with some hard economic times this year. And if you're an academy owner and you're not understanding that and you're not looking at markets and you're not listening to people, we've got some tough economic times coming with inflation rates and cost of living and everything else. So when parents are looking at their budget, they're saying, okay, what can I afford? Is your academy in the necessity driven business model category, or are they in the luxury? And the luxury side, it is everything that's getting cut out that they can deal without right now. They'll go to Starbucks one time a month instead of 20 times a month. They'll go out to eat one time a month or twice a month compared to 3 or 4 times a week. So does your academy get stuck in that category of luxury, or do they stay in necessity where, well, I've got to have something after school. I can't live without my martial arts academy. Everything I work with my kid in there, I cannot live without. So that's the way you really want to build your academy, is build it as a necessity driven business model. The word essential came up during COVID. Are you an essential business, or are you a non-essential business? But for us, it's about how do we build ourselves to be something the parents cannot live without. And when they look at their budget during tough economic times, they're going to be like, you know what? I'm not cutting them out. And that needs to be the goal. And what you're providing to the families, or even an adult, what are you providing in their lives that's keeping them in better shape, getting better sleep, keeping their weight down, keeping their stress loads down? What are you doing in that setup? So you're right on point when you're talking about the essential or necessity driven business models, because it's so important that we're building our academies not with our ego in mind, but how are we serving the community, which in turn will serve us, right? It's the old adage about if I give enough people what they want, I'll get what I want.
Right. So, um, one thing you were talking about before also was the first of all, I assume you're at the highest price point of these different daycare and after schools in your area, right? You're near the higher end, yeah. So they have to put their kids somewhere, but they could put their kids somewhere way cheaper than you. So that brings you to what you were saying otherwise. So you just having the after school program and summer camp isn't enough. You have to provide something extra in there, and they can't train all day, right? So it can't be all day of training. No. So what else is in there in that training time that makes them, it has to be you, and it can't be Joe's discount daycare next to the other sick crying kids where they sit in prison until their parent picks them up.
Right. So one thing we do is that we do an all-inclusive program. I do all-inclusive programs for my martial arts. I do all-inclusive programs for after school. I do all-inclusive programs for summer camp. I don't do an a la carte system, which most business owners do. Most academy owners do. Jiu-jitsu is not so much, where most times the testing and the belts are included with the tuition. Some jiu-jitsu academies do charge testing fees in their academies. Most of the traditional academies, that's where my foundation's from. We always charge testing fees. What I learned a long time ago was that, there were some parents that would not let their kids test because they didn't have the money at that time. And the kid didn't want to get left behind, so they would quit. So years ago, 2002, 2003, I moved to an all-inclusive model where I put the testing fees inside of the tuition. So that way we're not having it. On the after school side, the after school pickup, they get a daily snack. Their martial arts program that includes a basic martial arts program we give to the outside who never do after school program, that's built into the cost of the tuition. The days that they're out of school, we have camps on most of the school holidays, about 24 days out of the year where they have an all-day day camp. Those are included with the tuition. So while on the surface, then we also have staff that helps them with academic review, creative building strategy, and STEM stations. All that's built into one. So on the surface, it looks like we're more expensive. But when you go back and review, if you look at Joe's daycare, right? And then you have to do a day camp with Joe's daycare. Then you have to pick them up and take them to some other place to get a professional development program. Then you have to get some academic assistance. By the time you add all that together, it's going to be more than it would be if you're just going to one location that handles a complete done for you type system. The other thing that we did with it is that we wanted to make sure that, like on summer camp, we do something different that most summer camp don't do. We include everything with the tuition. That includes daily field trips, because most times when these daycares or even like somebody running a summer camp, they want to do an a la carte system. They'll have field trips, but the field trips are extra. And if you know anything about parents, when they pick the kids up from school, the very first thing they ask them is, hey, did you have fun today? Well, if they parents didn't pay for the extra field trips and their friends went on the field trip, and then the friends came back, oh man, the field trip was so exciting, it was great, we had a great time. And the kids like, great. Did you ever see Eddie Murphy Raw back in the 80s? I got some ice cream and you can't have, right? So that's the mentality that happens when you have a la carte systems. When everything's included with it, everybody's coming back excited. Everybody's had a great time, because again, I want to convert them from being a week or two of summer camp, that I want to convert them into one of my other programs. So if the parent shows up, the first question they ask us is, did you have fun today? No, it sucked. Why did it suck? Well, I didn't get to go on the field trip like Johnny did, right? That's all they're wrapped around. Doesn't make a difference. They had the best time of their life, not the other 90%. They're focused on that one thing. So years ago, we realized, don't do a la carte systems. Just include everything with it. It makes it easier on the staff. Everybody gets the same experience. You don't have and have nots. And you get to drive more revenue. When a parent looks at field trips, like they're looking at bowling, they're going to a trampoline park, they're looking at going to a water park, they're looking at these different things, in their head, they know that it's going to cost X amount of dollars. Well, for us, we negotiate a group price. So what may have cost 20 bucks for an individual to go, it may cost us $7. So in the pricing model, I'm able to have a higher pricing model because of the fact that these field trips are included with. And you don't have to go out to do field trips. You can bring field trips in. There's all kinds of mobile field trips. There's laser tag, there's mobile planetariums, there's petting zoos, there's all kinds of stuff that can come in. And again, in the parents' mentality, well, I remember we hired that laser tag place to come in and for a birthday party, and it was $300 for 10 kids, right? When they're coming to us, we'll rotate the kids around if we need to or do things. But again, it's not such a situation where I'm paying retail for these activities for these kids in summer camp. And they're still getting martial arts lessons. They're still getting all those things go along with the daily activities. So I think the all-inclusive model is the biggest thing that we discovered years ago, that instead of doing an a la carte, we do an all-inclusive. The other thing that we do, it's kind of funny that in the first of summer, like right now, we're already mystery shopping our competitors. We find out everything they have in summer camp, what they're doing, what the cost is, what field trips they're doing. And then we build a spreadsheet, and then I give it to the public. I let them see what everybody's true cost of their summer camp is, because they may advertise it's only $199 a week. But if you want them to do this field trip and that field trip and do this and that and the other, by the time it's all said and done with, it's about $350 a week. And it puts a lot of pressure on the parents, because when the kids are coming like, Daddy, Mommy, I really want to do that field trip, right? Well, that's another $35 there. That's another $50 there. So by the time it all adds up, it sounds less expensive on the front end, but after they get in, the parents are realizing, man, I've spent a lot more than I was budgeting for this summer.
Yeah. Well, that's I don't know how much you've heard about this sort of thing, but like in BJJ and Muay Thai and MMA gym circles, one big thing they bash about the traditional martial arts model. And those models, they probably shouldn't bash it so much, because those models are business sophisticated and make money. But the biggest thing they hate on is like, hey, it's just one big hidden fee. Right. And that's what you're talking about eliminating. It's like, yeah, sure, it's that. But yeah, once they do the belt testing and the this testing and the that, they say it's $79 a month at your academy. And the BJJ is more expensive. But It's not really. Not if you ever want to advance like your friends, and not like, and it's just this upsell Hades that you're sent into, that like you're either going to, like you said, you're either going to quit or you're going to pay it, because nobody wants their kid to be the only kid that doesn't get to do the cool stuff. You don't want your kid to be the only
Right.
eternal white belt. So you buy the testing, and surprise, at the upper ranks, testing price goes up, but you're not going to quit at brown and black belt, I guess. So now it's $100 a testing or whatever, and the board is $25 a board and whatever. So that's like the inside joke in BJJ is like on these schools is, so you did come from that model, but you actually throw that out too. So you don't like that either. So
But you look at BJJ and they have the seminar model, right? So it's all these seminars are coming up, right? And that's one reason why some BJJ schools are splitting revenue with, they're bringing in a high level person.
If you want to, if you right, yeah, well, if you want to know about that, the inside scoop on that, almost no school is making any money bringing in seminars. We usually lose money bringing in BJJ seminars. Very, very rare they make any money on those external seminars. So you're right, but like they don't make any money doing it, and that's for adults. It's BJJ, to their credit and to their demise, really is not about business, right? So at least the average one. So they're like, oh yeah, we do this because it's good for the art, it's good for that, like, and then they're looking at bankruptcy, and it's like, hey, is you going under good for the art? So
yeah, and jiu-jitsu's got so much to offer, and that's when for my jiu-jitsu clients, I'm like, guys, you got to stop thinking like it's 1980. We got to get you up into the current century, because jiu-jitsu or whatever you're teaching has a lot to offer to the community, and your time and your knowledge is massive, and it's vast, right? So why do you think that it's not worth? Why do jiu-jitsu owners think that sometimes their academies are not as valued as a traditional academy is, even though they bash the snot out of it? It doesn't teach anything, but they only want to charge a whole lot less than what a traditional academy will be able to charge. And
yeah, it's just not
on a good academy.
Right. It's the not having a business mindset, right? So it's not,
Right.
And this is similar to what we actually tell fighters, right? But people do it in business. So what I always tell my fighters is like, you don't bash your opponents, because one or two things are going to happen when you go into this fight. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. If you say the guy's a bum and you win, well, big deal, you beat a bum. If you lose, oh no, you got beat by a bum. So when they do that to they get that, but like when you do that to these martial arts schools, the traditional martial arts schools, is like, oh yeah, they suck. Well, they charge this amount though, right? So now you're getting beat by this person that sucks, and to you, it's like, oh, I can't charge that much though. They're overpriced, right? They're over there, but they're overpriced. They suck and they're overpriced, which means now you can't. So if that's true, now you can't charge that much because they're overpriced. If you understand that, especially for kids, I'm a huge proponent of like, we should be teaching real martial arts, and like kids should be able to learn how to defend themselves, but that's a secondary product for most parents, and that's a fact. Whether they're coming to my BJJ school or any other place, is they care about confidence and self-esteem. They might care about anti-bullying a little bit, but most of that's confidence and verbal anyway, and that's not the majority of people that come in anyway. So that's a secondary product.
Probably only 3 to 5%. Yeah, probably only 3 to 5% are really coming in for their children to learn how to fight. To start off with, you have to build that over time. Once the child's confidence gets where it needs to be at, then you can really start heavy pressure testing the techniques, right? For these kids, they'll really start to understand that, regardless of the art. You know, because
Yes.
in my academy, I have both a traditional school and a jujitsu school in one academy. And a lot of my kids cross train. So they're getting the best of both worlds, right? They're getting the grappling, they're getting the stand up. And then when we do our black belt test, they have to do both. They have to grapple. So it's like an MMA, right? So they have to understand the fight can go to the ground. If that's where it's at, that's where you have to manage. If it's stand up, you know, so you can't really rely on one or the other wholly without at least having a basic fundamental understanding of the other. Otherwise, you're going to get eaten up, and your opponent will realize, oh, you're great at stand up, but you didn't spend any time on your ground game. So I'm just going to get you on the ground where I'm more comfortable. And then the person that stands up has got the same mentality. You're not comfortable standing up. So I'm going to do everything I can not to let me get to the ground. Right. It's the same thing that happens in a UFC ring. Right. But they're understanding that process. But you're dead on, Brian, about majority of the families coming in. And I hate to say this, the majority of the families in our country are soft. They do not want their kids to face any kind of challenges or adversity. You know, do you think 10 push-ups is too much? Are you kidding me? You know, well, why do they have to do 50 jumping jacks? Well, do you want your kid to be lazy and sitting at home playing video games all the time and still living with you when they're 50? Or do you want them to be a productive adult in society? You know, it all starts now. But some of these parents, they're just soft. Kids are soft. And so we have to build that. But you can't build if we did kids the way that I was brought up in the martial arts as a kid, 99% of the kids would quit today. My instructor's theory was, I'm going to fight you at black belt level, even though you're 10, and you're either going to stick in it or you're going to quit, right? But I guess I was just too damn stubborn to quit. So I stuck in it, right? But we are unable to train kids the way that I was trained back in the 70s. When these guys were all coming back from Vietnam. I trained with all military guys. When they were coming back from Vietnam and they were just, you'd step on the mat. And we didn't have gear. So like the sparring gear that they have now, whether it's Muay Thai or MMA, we didn't have that. You would literally get punched bare knuckle. And you were lucky if you had a big football cup to protect your chicken nuggets, right? It was just one of those things. But it's very different today. But you're dead spot on about, you know, parents wanting more of the confidence and the self-esteem and the life skills. And then we build in the physical development along with it to make them tougher so that they can physically defend themselves should it ever come to that at school or in the street.
Yeah. So that's to my point. All the people that put down the traditional martial arts schools, we'll say for a moment that they're right. We'll say for a moment that they're the Tai Chi or whatever, they're the Kung Fu no-touch knockout school. And that absolutely nothing whatsoever. They don't even cover punches. All they do is no-touch knockouts and chi generation and whatever. And we'll say their martial art has no value whatsoever. But if they have the rest of it, the 95% of their product is still what the parents want, right? So they don't suck if they are providing that, because they may suck at that martial arts program, because the program I just described does not sound good. But if they're also teaching confidence and they're delivering what the parents actually want, because if you've written these ads for parents, you'll know what really converts. And I can tell you that, like, what the average BJJ student, academy owner thinks converts, it doesn't convert, because not at a high rate. What converts is, hey, does your kid walk tall, and like something like that, or does your anything appealing to self-esteem and confidence usually converts really well. And there's different ways you can go. You can go community and skills too, but yeah.
Sure. I think that even goes in the name of our academies too. And I think some guys miss that, right? Come to Broken Arm Martial Arts. We're going to help you. You know, that scares, no family's going to walk in the door on that. So even if you're an academy owner and you're watching this podcast, if your name has kind of a real extreme type, you know, what would be considered violent by some families, and you're a kids program, you got to change the name. You've got to be something that is inspiring. Like the name of our academy is Peak Performance, right? And we were the very first peak performance martial arts in the United States. Now there's a ton of them. But, you know, the thing is that your name of your company is important when it sets the tone in someone's mind about, you know, do I really want to go to broken arm martial arts? You know, it's just those things, right? So it's really important that they're setting the marketing, the message, the name, all that branding has got to be done the right way to set the tone for what you're doing. It includes the videos you've got going out too when you're doing a video to highlight something about your academy, right? You know, you can't go on there and be like, I'm going to teach your kid to mess another kid up, right? The old Cobra Kai days, right? That doesn't sell. And so we can eventually move the meter, right? Because we still do full contact sparring in my academy. I don't let them wear they have headgear on, but they can't wear face gear. You know, like some Taekwondo schools have the big chest protectors on, right? If you're out in the street, what do you say? Wait a minute, we're going to get in a fight here, but I need to run, grab my chest protector real quick before we get into this. You know, that's not a viable situation. We have to teach their bodies to get used to the contact so that when if they ever have to physically engage the first time they get hit, you know, it changes everything. So if we don't build and drive that starting out with when it first happens, right? It's like, I remember the very first time I did jujitsu and I'm thinking, oh, this can't be that tough. You're laying on the ground, right? And I remember the guy I was rolling with, you know, I'm about 225. I'm a big guy. And he was about 250, 260. And he was a black belt. And he and I are rolling. And he's not being, you know, belligerent, right? He's just rolling. But I remember him putting his full weight on me and then me trying to have to move while breathing. And I was like, whoa, this is a completely different experience, right? Because I didn't have the ability to move and evade and escape and move around in that situation. So it gave me another healthy respect for what's going on the ground in that situation. Because when somebody's laying on you and you can't expand your lungs and you can't breathe, and you've seen experience with this, and people freak out on the ground because they can't get a breath, right? They get into a panic mode. So you have to let up, let them get reset, and then go back into it. But that's a great way, when you look at that, it's a great way about life too. Because sometimes life's going to pressure the snot out of you. And how are you going to deal with that pressure? Are you going to give into it? Are you going to learn to manage it and get stronger with it? So there's every single one, if they're done the right way, will provide the great lessons they can learn.
So many schools do pretty good with the lesson plan. Yeah, some are a little bit Cobra Kai-ish a little bit, but in terms of providing that extra 95%, that's why the Taekwondo school usually has way more kids than the Jiu-Jitsu school. There's exceptions, right? Some Jiu-Jitsu schools have really good kids programs. But what is, especially if you're talking about after school or summer camp where there's a lot of time out of class, can we go more into exactly how you deliver those things? Because you talked about all the things you deliver, but how exactly are you delivering those other 95% that these parents are looking for, these other life skills and things?
Yeah, great question. Let me preface that with one of the things that I do with my coaching clients or anybody that's even looking at doing an after school or summer camp program. The very first thing that I look at is that, do you have the space that is separate from the mat to be able to have kids during their non-physical development time have a place to go to? The one big mistake academy owners make is they have their after-school kids next to the mat. Well, the after-school kids are not always disciplined when they're off the mat. That distracts the kids that are on the mat. Then if you got kids coming in for the outside for evening martial arts, their parents are getting mad because the kids over here are distracting. They're feeding off each other, right? So for us, the activities that we do is there's basically 5. There's academic assistance, there's creative, building, strategy, and STEM stations. And I've got a staff of 3 staff members, and I've got 2 classrooms that are completely opposite ends of the building. So when the kids are done with their training, they go change, put their stuff in their locker, and they'll transition back to their non-physical development time. And then the staff back there has a complete setup of what they're doing that day. So a lot of the kids, and we have full computer systems that are back there because a lot of these kids during COVID transitioned from a paper academia set to an electronic academia set. So we have those back there. Then we also coach the parents on making sure that most kids have a take-home folder they'll take home every day. And then we make sure inside of that take-home folder is the username, the password for any of the online accounts they have for academics for school that they can get into. So that way that we're not getting the, oh, I can't do my homework because I forgot to log in. So there's a lot of preface that we do with the parents to make sure that I eliminate those right off the bat. We don't have that argument. And then we have a lot of different activities and we rotate the activities around that we're doing. I make the kids read every day for 15 minutes. If they're a kindergarten or first grade, they're not reading, I'll have one of the fifth or sixth graders read with them so that they're still getting that same benefit of reading. To kind of give you what's happened with our academic system is that when I started this after school program that I have now back in 2001, my kindergartners would get about 20 sight words every week that they had to learn. They had to write them down. They had to memorize them. Now, my kindergartners coming home get 0 sight words a week. They learn like 1 or 2 words a week inside of the classroom at school. Well, there has been extensive studies that have been done that the larger your vocabulary is, the more that you read, the higher your income potential is. So we're literally dumbing down our kids. So in my after school program, my goal is to do as much as we possibly can the time that I have with them with organized activities that are off the mat if they're not on the mat, to make sure that we don't just have Lord of the Flies going on in the back room. It's structured, it's routine driven. About every 15 minutes, we're moving and doing something different so the kids are not getting bored. They've got about a 6-minute attention span right now, but we do the back room and such that most times the kids will be engaged, and then we switch what we're doing. We switch again, and it rotates around. So the kids that are on the mat first for the 4 o'clock class, when they're done about 4:45 to 5 o'clock, when they're rotating back, the earlier rotations we did with the first group is coming back around. And that group at 4 o'clock that was in the back room is now going on the mat at 5 or 6 o'clock. So this is constantly a moving game that we've developed over years. And that's one thing that we teach in our coaching program.
So you're rotating people through stations. You said it was 5 stations? 4 or 5? I missed
Yeah,
that.
so they have 5 things that they're going to work on in the back. We do 1 STEM project a week. We don't do it every day. It's just 1 during the week. But creative building strategy and academic assistance are the other 4. So they'll get about 15 minutes of each of those, and then we rotate them. And then they'll come out of the back room, they'll go to the mat. If they're on the mat, they'll come to the back room. So they're constantly moving.
So
Now, if they have, go ahead.
So I was just like doing some math. 15 minutes times 4 is an hour, right? Am I missing
Right.
that? Right. So that's just an hour.
No,
You got
you're
a
right.
lot of day. You got a lot of day left. So you rotated through everything. So are they going to go through rotate again, or they're doing something in between before they rotate through again, or how does that work?
Yeah, so about 90% of the kids in our program are gone from us within an hour and a half.
Oh,
So if
okay.
they're getting to the academy, let's say between 3:15, 3:30, by 5:15, the majority of those kids are gone. I'll only have probably 10 or 12% that'll stay till about 6 o'clock. And only probably 3 to 5 kids out of the 120 that I have stay till 6:30. So the kids that are primarily there, they'll get their martial arts class. So by the time that they're going and changing into their uniform, going on mat and training, coming off the mat, changing their uniform out, because I make the kids leave the uniform there for the week, because if I don't, half of them will forget it to bring it back, to bring it back from day in, day out. And so when they're not on the mat, then they're in the back room. And then a lot of the kids that are, say, starting about 4th grade and up, they get a little bit longer homework information. It all depends on what school they're going to. Because not only do we pick up at the public schools, but I pick up at the private and the charter schools as well. And so for the private and charter schools, they get a lot more homework. And so if they're doing homework from school, I tell the kids that comes first. do the homework from school first. Let's get that knocked out. So when you get home, you get to be a kid, you get to play. You don't have to go home with mom and dad and like, all right, now let's bring out the homework at 6 o'clock. Because for a lot of the kids in my program, they'll do martial arts, but then they're also doing other sports and activities: baseball, football, basketball, lacrosse, hockey, soccer. So they're doing other things. So by the time they're getting done with that practice, it could be 6:30, 7 o'clock by the time that they're getting home. Could be later. And then now they have to fight the homework battle. So that's one of the selling points that we talk with the parents about, is that as long as we know about the homework, kids aren't lying about it, we're going to get the homework done when they're with us. As long as it's not some big project, right? But if it's basic homework, we're going to get it done. So that way, when they get home, that's one less thing the parents have to worry about. It's one of our selling tools that we use when people are coming into that program. And when you set it up the right way, believe me, parents are so happy about that, because all they have to do is one little quick check. They look at the answers. Yeah, it's right. Boom, you're done. They don't have to sit down and be like, okay. The kid's like, I've been removed from school for 4 hours. Why do I want to go back and do this now? We want to strike when the iron's hot.
Yeah, people like done for you for sure. I've learned that for sure after being in the business for a while, and this is like the kids' version of done for you. So what is the difference in summer camp, right? So it's longer, right? And they haven't been in school, so it's like, are the stations still there? What's that like? What's the difference in what you just talked about?
Yeah, great question. So for us, the morning time from 7 a.m. the doors open up till about 9 a.m. Now it all depends if we have an early departure for a field trip. So in the morning time, they have our mat space, and this is not a brag, we're just very blessed. Our mat space is 4,200 square feet. So I have a lot of mat space.
How much
Now
out
I
of
have
mat
the two
space?
classrooms. I'm sorry?
How much out of mat space?
5,000.
Okay. So
we have 9,000 square feet, so about 4,800. But so we have 4,200 square feet of mat space, and everything else in the 9,000 is office, or it's the classrooms and bathrooms.
How much outside of mat space? Sorry, I'm derailing you a little bit, but how much outside of mat space do you need per kid? Like, do you have an idea of square footage that you would want to have per kid of out of mat space to be able to execute what you want?
Yeah, so like our after school room, the two classrooms we have is about 800 square feet. The rest of it is program director offices for doing enrollments. We have two big bathrooms with changing rooms. We have an employee room that has everything from the kitchenette area to where the employees can eat lunch. We have one full wall that's about 24 feet long that has all of our uniforms and all of the retail stuff, right? And then we have a pretty sizable seating area where we have bleachers all set up where they can watch. Our mat is 100 feet wide, 42 feet deep. And then I've got bleacher seating that goes across the front of it so the parents could sit and watch class. So there's not really a set. We right now we're utilizing every single inch we have.
Yeah.
So I think that for summer camp with us running 160 kids, we're using every bit of the usable space, which is probably right around 6,500 square feet between the classrooms, the open areas, the training mat. I don't let them come back in the office area, or the bathrooms we use because they're changing and going to the restroom, right? But we're not utilizing that as, okay, kids, we're going to go train in the bathroom today. We're going to teach you how, if you get in a fight in the bathroom, this is how you're going to handle it. We don't do that. But, we're utilizing those spaces. So that's one reason why we're in the process of buying the land and the building. And where the building on the land is 17,000 square feet, we're going to move it to 24,000 square feet, just to give us more room and be able to expand the operation even more. Because our summer camps have waiting lists every week that are about 20 to 30 deep. And we sell out by the 1st of April. So, I mean, it really does. We're sold out and have waiting lists. And I've got people that call me and be like, yeah, I know that your summer camp is 300 for the week. I'll give you 700 if you move my kids to the front of the line for every week that they want to be there. I'm like, well, I appreciate it, but no, because it's not ethical, right? It's just not. People have already been standing in line, and it's not the right thing to do. So I don't know the exact person per square footage, Brian, but I know that we use about every inch we can. And it's just a matter of when you are pushing the limits, how are you moving the kids to make sure that you're not overloading the mat for during training time, you're not overloading the classroom. How are you managing that stuff? That's one of the things that we work on with them, is how are they managing it in their academies.
So when you're rotating, each group is going to a different classroom, basically.
Could be a classroom, could be on the mat, could be on the turf area that we have. It could be any number of places. Summer camp's a little bit more challenging than after school. And after school, I've got 120 kids every day, roughly. In summer camp, I've got 160. Okay. So it's just a matter of where they're moving at. And then I've got, everything from a child that's never done class before all the way up to my black belts. And so that you have to manage that as well, because you can't put a black belt with a child that's a white belt that's never had any class whatsoever, regardless if it's traditional or jiu-jitsu, right? The black belt's going to get bored. The white belt's going to be overwhelmed. And so you have to manage all that as well. So all of our classes are structured by levels. We have level 1, which is basically a child that's been in the program for 0 day to 1 year. Level 2 is the end of 1 year to end of second year. Level 3 is end of second year to the third year. And then my black belt classes are everything from end of third year, getting ready for black belt and everything else. Brian, I got about 2 or 3 more minutes, buddy, because I got to go catch a flight.
Sounds good.
They changed flight times on me.
Okay.
Yesterday.
For the question I interrupted you on the difference in between summer camp and after school, let's go back to a little bit of that, and then we'll wrap
absolutely.
up.
Sure. So in the morning time, we've got different games and activities set up, whether they're on the mat or they're in the classrooms, and they can rotate freely between them. We have a field trip every day. So typically by 9 o'clock, we're lining up for the field trip. We're going swimming, we're going bowling, we're going trampoline parks, we're going different places. We're typically, and we'll go eat lunch out at a pavilion someplace at a park where there's different contraptions that kids can play on. We typically come back to the academy about 1:30. And then from 1:30 to 3 o'clock, there's different things they can do. That's typically our cool down time, because we've been running and gunning so hard that if I put them in a class at 4 o'clock, they're toast. I don't have them. So it's really kind of a cool down. We put a movie on, relax. They can do some different games and activities that are more board game type stuff, but that's our cool down time. 3 o'clock, we're doing snack. And then they play from 3:05 till about 3:40. And then we get into our after school routine, which is just like after school during the school year. Some kids are doing class, some kids are doing academics, some kids are doing strength training, and we just move that around until kids are being picked up. And then during summer camp, I've got kids that get picked up as early as 3 o'clock, all the way up to 6:30. But even during summertime, just like after school, 90% of my kids are gone between 5 to 5:30.
So for academics, it's not homework in the summer, or it's you provide.
We do
something?
about 15 minutes of. We do.
Okay.
Kids lose up to 8 weeks of knowledge during the summertime. We literally in the academic, in the education system, we literally lose a year of school having to do the reviews to get the kids back up to speed when they go back to school. So we do reviews with them so that we can keep them on par. So when they get back into school in August or September, depending on what part of the country, they're not having to relearn everything they learned the previous year. They're on par.
Awesome. So thanks so much. I know you got to run. So you want to tell people how they could reach you if they want to learn more about what you do, or hit you up about anything?
Sure. Yeah, you can reach me at my mobile, 512-658-1804. You can also email me at info@sevenfigurebusinesssuccess.com.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on, Gary. It was great.
Brian, it was great seeing you, and look forward to seeing you very soon, man.
All right.